All right, we're now joined by former Minister and struggle veteran Ronnie Kasrils on the line. Mr. Kasrils, thank you very much for being with us. You've called Denis Goldberg wonderful, remarkable. Tell us how you will remember him first up.
Yeah, a special, remarkable, wonderful, beautiful human being. Very, very special person. You know, when he returned to South Africa, he told me how young people would ask him, what was in it for you? You joined the struggle and you went to prison. What did you get out of it? And his sense was, in this acquisitive age, that they were asking what he was paid. And he was quite taken aback. And he said to me, you know, I'd have to explain that my generation, and he was talking about that golden generation, which still must live today, and that was the Slovo and the Mandela Sisulu generation. And he would explain, you know, we didn't do it for self-gain. We didn't do it for power and glory and ourselves. We did it for our people. We were serving our people. We weren't looking for any remuneration. He never ceased till the end to explain to human beings what the struggle was about and what service to the people was about. That was what imbued him. Now, we have heard people going on about Denis Goldberg coming from a privileged position, a white guy after all. And of course, there were privileges for all whites. And he gave up any opportunity to use that. As Andrew Malangeni said, he could have become very wealthy and so on. But one must recall, Denis Goldberg came from, like a lot of whites, and a lot like his parents, who were immigrants, Jewish immigrants, escaping anti-Semitism, the pogroms in Tsarist Russia, who came to settle in South Africa, but they were communists. They were communists in the best sense of the word. They lived in a mixed-race suburb in Cape Town. The house was filled with fellow struggle people, communists and not, some Christians who really believed that the point was to uplift the people, to fight racism, oppression, exploitation. And this is what imbued Denis, the service to people that he imbued from his communist background. There are people who imbue it through their church service and so on, but it was very powerful within the communist movement, by the way, whatever you might think about communism in power. And Denis joined the South African Communist Party as a result at a very young age in 1957, quite a few years after leaving university and being qualified as an engineer, newly married man. And you know who recruited him? Bram Fischer, no less. An Afrikaner from something of an aristocratic background, but also came around in revulsion at the racism of South Africa, and through his involvement in the Communist Party, the belief that it wasn't just for political rights, but for equality and not privation, that the economy had to change. That was why Denis, in his commitment right through to the end, and in his critique of the ANC, especially under Zuma, but still with the corruption and the self-service feathering of one's nest after Zuma, and why he supports Cyril Ramaphosa coming to power for renewal of the ANC, was that if you were a public functionary, if you were a member of a party of the ANC, the Communist Party, you were there to serve the people and lift them out of the mire, out of poverty, out of disease, out of inequality, out of homelessness, out of being marginalized. That made Denis remarkable and special because he was prepared to sacrifice it all and he had a loving family he was devoted to, but he was prepared to go to prison, to serve the Umkhonto we Sizwe, to go underground, and as we well know, it's been recorded so often, what led him to be with the Rivonia trialists, facing its death sentence.
Mr. Kasrils,
Denis was an internationalist, which is what our struggle should also be about. He was so opposed to the mistreatment and the xenophobia against immigrants in our country. He stood so tall in terms of solidarity, international solidarity, and in meeting with the Communist Party within, I think it was 2 years ago, he pledged that there was this need for international solidarity and that the party needed to work, as the ANC should, as our people should, to intensify solidarity with working people throughout the world and to defend working people's rights, which is what led Denis, as a person with a Jewish background, not a Zionist background. They didn't believe that there should be a state of Israel that dispossessed the indigenous Palestinian people. And Denis stood firmly in support of the rights of the Palestinian people, condemning Israel's brutality and barbarism against the Palestinian people. So this runs through Denis's life, feeling for people, standing by people, fighting against injustice, fighting for the people without privileges, for the dispossessed, and in the last years of his life, standing up within his community as a man who had a very debilitating illness of his lungs, of cancer. His energy in any human being would have been waning, and they would have stayed at home resting and waiting for the final hour. In these last 3 years, he threw himself in the most energetic way into creating a House of Hope in Cape Town. He collected money. He established a center for music, for the arts, for sports, for the deprived youngsters of the Cape Peninsula and Hout Bay where he lived, and not just for them, but for their parents as well. And in a sense, for me, that exemplifies in the community he lived in to the end his broadest universal commitment to the whole of humanity. And this is what is so remarkable about Denis Goldberg, and a man of great humor. If we've got time, just let me say, when he came back into South Africa after working for the ANC post-94 in London, raising money, speaking around the world, etc., I managed to bring him back to work for me when we were in water affairs and forestry. He would go into the villages to report back to the department and to me, were our projects working? What needed to be done to ensure the water and the sanitation delivery to the people? And at that stage, in 2002, the Department of Water Affairs was working very well. It's the Zuma years that took the country back, and where people pillaged the resources, the funding, and I'm talking about people from municipal to provincial to national level. We know all that. Yeah. But he had this humor. And in the department, a lot of the people would mistake him for me. There's some resemblance, maybe not so at the end, I'm not sure, but there is a resemblance. After all, we both come from a Jewish, Lithuanian background. The gene pool's quite small, and they would mistake him for me, and he would rectify it. And he would say, no, it's not the minister. I'm his advisor, Denis Goldberg. You know, the way to distinguish us is I'm the handsome one. And, he would come into my office having come up in the lift with people who have mistaken us, and he would have pointed that out, and he would tell me, and we would just roar with laughter. He was always ready for that kind of quip. A remarkable man, what's sometimes called a Renaissance man, a man who had a love for art, for music, for architecture, for the sports, and a man with a huge heart, a man whose heart was filled with love for humanity, all of humanity, that knew and understood that the primary people who were oppressed and exploited in our country were the indigenous, the black African people, the brown people of our country. And he lived in that kind of community in Hout Bay, and the Palestinians, as I've mentioned, and people around the world.
Yeah.
And that was Denis Goldberg, the most remarkable, wonderful, beautiful human being you could ever wish to meet.
That is an absolutely beautiful tribute. And just briefly, I mean, he said that he believed in Ubuntu. He tried to espouse that. We don't often hear that word today. There seems to be so much division. Is there something for all of us to take away, to look again back at Ubuntu?
Well, you're so right. You're so right. Ubuntu, the love of humanity, that we are people because of other people. We can't live on our own. We can't live in our own cocoons. We can't, as a people, like, unfortunately, the Zionists, the Israelis, I mean, I'm from that Jewish background, who want to be exclusive. You have to be inclusive. It's got to be about everybody, a love for everybody. Che Guevara said that revolution is an act of love. Ubuntu is about love. There's a Yiddish expression that Denis learned from his Yiddish background, and that's being a mensch, a mensch. And in Yiddish, a mensch is a word that exemplifies a beautiful person, a good person. Denis was a mensch. He was filled, his heart was filled with Ubuntu, with togetherness, to being open to everybody, to wanting to bring his message to everybody. I've read in the Jewish Report, I read these papers, it's pro-Zionist, it regards me as a self-hating Jew. It tries to cite Denis, as you know, he wasn't so bad. He was prepared to talk to us. And they try on that basis to say that, you know, therefore maybe he was something of a Zionist. What Denis was prepared to do, as Mandela did and Denis did, he was prepared to talk to his prison warders, to educate them, to make them aware. He was prepared to go to any lengths to talk to people, and Zionist people, Jewish people, not all who believe in Zionism, that's a political doctrine. Yeah. They don't all uphold Israel, which is a cruel, merciless country, a racist colonial country, and he would be prepared to speak to people, whoever they were, through Ubuntu, through love, to the belief that you could get people to understand the truth.
All right.
But he didn't believe that in a utopian way. To do that, you've got to fight and you've got to struggle. Just as he speaks to the ANC and he encourages President Ramaphosa, who's beginning to sound as though he's listening to people like Denis, because Ramaphosa today, in talking about Denis, was saying Denis wanted to see a real renewal of the ANC. He wants to see the people's situation in our country, the deprivation amongst the working people, the unemployed, the women, the youngsters, who are the have-nots of this country. And Ramaphosa, learning, I believe, from the likes of Denis, as he should from his own understanding of what exploitation, oppression, suffering, poverty is all about, was saying in his tribute that Denis teaches us that we've got to uplift the people of our country. We've got to look that way, especially now in this dreadful pandemic that we're facing. And
Mr.
who's
Kasrils,
going to suffer the most?
we have to leave it there, but
the
thank you for
vulnerable.
that beautiful tribute to Denis Goldberg. Remembering Denis Goldberg, he had brought him back as an advisor when he was minister. That was former minister and struggle veteran himself, Ronnie Kasrils.